When young people are supported, we are going to meet you where you are.
You're all SMEs, but you could also be part of larger value chains with bigger businesses.
So I think there's a real opportunity. The UK is the 6th largest economy in the world. You know, it's a major marketplace.
The youth, they need to take up these opportunities. Then we are here as policymakers to be able to then support them.
And that is what will also bring about the change, when you show up and you take your seat at the table.
Hello and welcome to State of Africa. I'm Jeff Morte with the Africa Leadership and Dialogue Institute. They say small businesses are like seeds, full of potential, ready to grow if given the right soil. Recently, I met a young entrepreneur from Senegal who said if I could get one steady client and a small loan, I could hire 3 more people tomorrow. Her story reflects millions across Africa, and it's why leaders from over 60 countries gathered in Johannesburg for the first ever Global SME Ministerial Meeting hosted by the International Trade Center. This historic summit put the small business agenda at the highest political level with one mission: to create practical, grassroots solutions that help SMEs break into new frontiers. I spoke with Pamela Hamilton-Coke, Executive Director of the ITC, on the critical issues shaping this landscape: access to finance, digital transformation, and closing policy gaps. I want us to, drill a bit deeper from the Global Ministerial Meeting to Africa, yes, the continent. And from where you stand, what's your assessment of Africa when it comes to its position as far as, global trade is concerned at this point in time?
That's a big question. I think, Africa is nowhere where it should be. I think everybody knows this. I think, though, that there's also a growing recognition that the levers have started to be put in place to make it happen. I believe the AFCFTA is a very central pillar of that entire process, and that if intra-African trade is made to work the way it can and the way it has shown potential to, it can revolutionize trade within Africa and trade with Africa and other continents. And I think it's become even more critical and urgent now when we accept, I guess, the fact that AGOA ends in September and there has been no indication that it will be renewed or extended. Now, unless there is some major announcement between now and that date, which is a little over a month, we assume, therefore, that it will end. The implications of that for many of the African countries who have built many of their industries and their export earnings on AGOA are quite dire. And so the AFCFTA now once again becomes even more critical in the context of the loss of the market share and of the foreign exchange earnings that would have come with that. So we have to look at several things. We have to look at speeding up the implementation of the AFCFTA within Africa. We have to look at finding alternative markets for many of the goods and services, well, mainly goods that were provided for under the AGOA. We have to look at how do we lower the internal barriers within Africa. Africa's intra-African trade, the percentage is 14 to 16%. Come on. That it cannot, it's not feasible. And so that has to be the first order of business. How do you lift those internal barriers? And the truth is, most of them are pretty simple. Huh? They're administrative, non-tariff measures. They're not huge obstacles, but they're these little things that sometimes, it's the little things that sometimes derail relationships, right? Right. He wouldn't put away his toothbrush or something.
It's the sauce, always the sauce.
It's the sauce, yeah, whatever. But there's the little things, and I think if those little things, just remove some of them, it would completely transform Africa's intra-regional trade, and as a result, the strength of that then becomes Africa's engagement with the rest of the world.
I want us to talk about accessibility to finance, because that has been a conversation I've been in this year. Every single room you get into,
every room,
we're talking
every
about
year,
it. Exactly.
every continent.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the beauty about it, Ms. Hamilton, is that you're both a diplomat and a lawyer, so you know business, trade, it's an incentives game.
Yes.
What key incentives are we missing? Because if the incentives were right, we'd have solved this a long time ago.
Yes, yes.
So what's the private sector missing? What are the financiers missing to make this finance both accessible and affordable?
I think there are several things. One of the biggest challenges that SMEs are not monolithic. You know, it's hard given an SME in Jamaica is fundamentally different from an SME in Nairobi or in Malaysia. You know what I mean? So that's one of the challenges that we face. But I think on the broader access to finance issue, I also believe that there remains a tendency to view SMEs as non-viable. You know, and that is a hustler. You know? And with that vision of hustler comes the kind of dismissiveness of he's just trying a thing, but he's not really going to produce anything and he's not going to succeed. So we have to change that mentality. We have to begin to see the future of the hustler. We have to begin to see the potential and the possibilities. And we need to start telling those stories. You know, those stories aren't told often enough. The second is that the cost of accessing finance is prohibitive to so many. I was in a country just recently and they were saying that the loan was like 20-something%. And I thought, how do you expect? So we have to look at that, the cost. Governments need to put in place mechanisms that incentivize loaning to SMEs. I know that some development banks have been able to do that, where they actually have a carve-out window specifically for SMEs, where they not only give them loans, but they also train them. And this is one of the important aspects. One of the issues many SMEs face is their lack of internal record keeping, accounting, tax, paperwork. They just don't have it. And yeah, I mean, in fairness, nobody's going to give you money with nothing. So that's one of the disciplines that they have to develop, having that kind of internal record keeping discipline so that they can present something. The third is to become more innovative and creative about how you determine value. One of the biggest challenges, and something I've said repeatedly for years, is that Facebook, Google, Amazon would be dead were it left to our countries because they're ideas. And the fact is that one of the biggest challenges with most of our banks is that they have not figured out how to ascribe value to an idea, to an intangible. And that is critical. And I think part of the problem is most of our banks still are very traditional. You know, they can't see outside of the piece of land that you bring, or you know, or the house, or it has to be something tangible. And I think we have to begin to look at the process by which we ascribe value to an idea. And that's an important aspect to work with the banks, and even not just the banks, but all financial institutions. We have a lot of credit unions with very, very high liquidity.
There's another key lever that we're going to be looking at, and that's digital transformation.
Yes.
I want us to speak about that as well, especially in the context of, you know, African SMEs, because with digital transformation also comes the divide.
Yes.
You know, so how do you make sure that those under-resourced African SMEs that have the idea, have the passion, have the work ethic, but are a bit disadvantaged on that particular point? How do we try and, you know, leave no SME behind?
I'm one of those people who believe in both private sector driven economies, but public sector facilitation and intervention. The two don't operate without each other. And I think it's a fallacy for people to say this. Every single economy that functions effectively and has an effective private sector also has governments that create an environment that enables that private sector to function. It's what they do for the big guys. But somehow when it comes to SMEs, nobody can do that. Why? I think when it comes to digital, the first thing is to recognize that if you're not in the digital space in 2025, you're in trouble. It's simple. Every single thing now exists in the digital realm, and it's going to continue and get even more so. You will soon not be able to pay anything in cash. You will soon not be able to order anything. The phones won't mean anything to anybody. Nobody's answering your phone, right? If it's not email or WhatsApp or SMS, or it's not going to happen. Even your identification, your registration, everything about how you engage with the business world is going to be digital. So it's a basic, it's like air. You will not be able to function unless you have this. So in my view, then this comes down to infrastructure and to government. Governments have to make a commitment to facilitate access to digital connectivity for their populace. And it has to be a decision, just like building roads or building any other form of infrastructure, that is seen as part of the development framework. It's not a nice to have. It's not something, oh, you know, you want to watch Netflix. It is a requirement for the new economy. And I think once you change the way you see the digital, you know, connectivity and the digital enhancement, it will change how you approach it. Africa, across the board, some countries have 65%, some have 15%. And it's getting worse. That can only be a recipe for disaster. Because as the divide grows, then so does the social, you know, separation and everything else that comes with that. And the frustration. And the fact that you now have the youngest, you know, population in the world, and by 2050, Africa will be the youngest and largest population in the world. It is important that you address the specific needs of this young populace and their interests and how they see themselves. I say this, one of the key elements that I discovered, I have a son who is now 24. And he's taught me a lot because, you know, I think part of the difficulty with our age, as we were talking about earlier, not you, but people my age, right, is that if you're not connected with the young people, you miss a lot. You know, you don't see certain things. And it's important to see how they see the world. When we were growing up, my world was the little world I lived in. My family, my friends, my school, you know. Then I went to university, and it was my university, my friends, my school, my family back home. There was no global village. There was no way for me to get up in the morning and know immediately that Peru had this accident on this bus. We would hear it maybe 2 to 3 days later in the newspaper. Information is immediate. Everything exists in a global village. They talk to each other across thousands of miles every day. So their world is not our world. Their world is a global village. And so when they see what others have or what others can have, that is denied to them, they ask why. And how do we answer? Right. So we have to start seeing the world the way they see it and approaching the world the way they see it. That we are a global village. And therefore, as a global village, we have to begin to have global solutions to global problems.
As Africa rethinks how to reposition its SMEs and refine its policies, the Ministerial offered more than just speeches. It became a hub for high-value networking and knowledge exchange. Here's a fascinating insight. Brazil has the second largest African diaspora outside the continent, and its economy has been transformed through agriculture, with SMEs thriving along the value chain. Access to capital. Because even as you promote this, they need the money for working capital to improve product and all of this. How are entrepreneurs in Brazil, dealing with this particular challenge? What insights can we get also as we equip our own?
I believe that this is a global challenge because access to capital is totally related to risk. And the traditional financial instruments, if they just look at the risk of the company of MSME, they won't lend any money because there is a high risk over there. So what we have been doing in Brazil for MSMEs and also for what we call individual, it's an individual entrepreneur. He's alone. It's like a woman who produces candies and sells. Like she doesn't have any partner and any capitalist partner, any employees. It's only her. This we call it in Brazil MEI. It's a micro entrepreneur, individual micro entrepreneur. Also, since President Lula took office, he has asked the most important banks in Brazil, both public and private banks, to develop special instruments for this type of companies. So we have now, for instance, Banco do Brasil, which is our biggest bank focused on consumers in Brazil. They have launched special credit instruments focused on this type of companies where the risk is calculated in different ways and it's diluted by the amount of work and amount of, sometimes even social impact that endeavor can handle by the end of the day.
But when you move away from financial players and capital, there's also a question of policy, and if policy is actually speaking to these young entrepreneurs as well. I know you've been in very many meetings here, you've been listening as well, even before you came for this particular meeting. Where do you feel the gap is for policymakers in terms of the policies formulated and how they're implemented for MSMEs?
Yeah, I think we are in a very challenging time because, like, for my parents and even for me, we knew that if we went to school, if we had a diploma, and if we graduated, we would get a job. This is not the reality anymore in many countries in the world, also in Brazil, despite of our economy being has been growing a lot for the last years. But the thing is that the way products are delivered to consumers, the way services are provided, it's all changing in a very, very quick way. And then sometimes I feel that public policies are not following this speed of change of the reality of the work world. In Brazil, we have and our Ministry of SMEs. It's one of its areas of work. It's really to think about how to include young people in the workplace, but without thinking about the traditional ways to include someone in the workplace, like a regular job. You have to really support entrepreneurship and continuous education in such a way that nowadays you have a company that is dedicated to, let's say, furniture, but tomorrow you can change for music. We have seen that because young people are also very, very creative and very, they want to change and they want to propose new ideas, and this is great for the growth of the economy.
The Ministerial wasn't just about business. It attracted heads of state and senior government leaders and aligning the political weight behind SME growth. Now, in today's volatile global economy, one question stood out. How can countries in the Global South collaborate more effectively to safeguard and grow their economies? Ambassador Matthew Wilson, Barbados' ambassador to the WTO, offered thought-provoking insights into this pressing challenge.
These young entrepreneurs in the African continent, like in the Caribbean, they're brave. They're willing to take risks. They're willing to invest in people and processes. They're willing to bring others along with them. And I think that's really what we need if we're going to build a competitive world that is going to be able to deal with a lot of these situations that are happening right now. You know, global value chains are disrupted. Geopolitics is really at a very tenuous edge. There are issues on trade issues, especially to do with tariffs, the tariff war. And what we need to do is to invest in the innovation of our people, of our young people, because ultimately they are the ones who are going to define the future competitiveness of our economies. So I have to say, I'm hearing a lot of things I've heard before. Access to finance is an issue. Access to markets is an issue. High logistics costs is an issue. Differential treatment of women-owned businesses and women entrepreneurs is an issue. But then I'm also hearing some new elements like standardization and how they're going to meet international environmental standards, for example. And these are some of the new issues on the agenda that we're going to have to confront. But I really want us to move from this diagnostics. We're great at doing diagnostics. And I want us to move to solutions.
And even when you look at that, because I'm sure you also, monitor some of the trends, across the world and see what's happening in terms of, this particular space. When it comes to issues like even digital transformation, digital skills, what are you seeing is a trend there as far as SMEs are concerned, and how can they leverage more on this?
Yeah. I mean, frankly, embracing the digital transformation makes it easier to do business. It increases your profit margin. It makes you more efficient. It creates more market access opportunities for you. It connects you with other entrepreneurs as well. Frankly, is the way to go. And we all say that and we all know that, but sometimes we forget that the digital divide is a real thing, and that there's a whole section of our communities that don't even have access to mobile phones. So when you're talking about AI and you're talking about digital payment systems and you're talking about algorithms, you have got to remember that there is an incredibly important part of your population that simply doesn't have access to steady internet. So you need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. You need to be able to deal with some of those fundamentals, making sure everybody has access to the internet, making sure everybody has electricity to allow them to have access to the internet, who I think have the tools and the expertise. And when you merge the tools and the expertise and the finances with a good policy and regulatory environment, there you have a match made in heaven.
Right. You've mentioned that particular word of finance, and I want to pick that particular word and talk about it in context of our SMEs. It's a key pillar of conversation right here as well, in terms of access to finance and also access to affordable finance.
Yeah.
What's been the issue, Ambassador Wilson? Because not the first time we're having this conversation, not the first year, not the first room. Everybody knows it's quite a barrier. Why can't we solve it?
And liquidity is not the issue. The money is there. So the supply is there, and clearly the demand is there, because this is either the number 1 or number 2 priority on every SME list, but something is missing in the middle. We're not able to make those connections. And I think there are a number of things we can do. One, I think we need to train the commercial banks to maybe be a little bit more less risk averse, change the risk perception around SMEs, and see them not as individual SMEs, but see them as part of a wider ecosystem. So there's work that I think we need to do with the commercial banks. We need to enhance our regulations to make them a little bit more open to new and innovative forms of financing. Using bonds, for example, really bringing in fintech in a real way, facilitating angel investors. I mean, these are all things that I think are also reliant on having an appropriate policy and regulatory environment. And we also have to help capacitate these small businesses to know how to ask for a loan and how to ask for a grant. And we have to help build financial literacy as well. Because, collateral is a big issue, and a big part of collateral is having effective data. And a big part of having effective data is having the financial literacy to be able to capture that data. So it also starts in terms of skills building and education. So it's a multifaceted ecosystem approach, but I think we have got to close this gap, because for far too long we've been talking about this, and we now need to solve the missing middle and make the connections, because we will not have an SME ecosystem that prospers if they don't have access to the finances to be able to allow them to do that, and to allow them to grow and reinvest into their business.
We are taking a short break here on State of Africa. When we return, you'll hear directly from young African entrepreneurs in a lively, no-holds-barred dialogue with policymakers, tackling challenges head-on and offering bold, homegrown solutions. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching State of Africa, an ALADI production that's showcasing impactful conversations that are driving the continent forward. Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Cooperatives and MSMEs, Wycliffe Oparanya, explained how targeted initiatives are helping de-risk lending and unlock vital capital for small enterprises. I want us to start right at the top and speak to the issue at the heart of it. Looking at SMEs, how they can grow, how they can flourish, how they can be the real drivers of economy. Yes. Can you give us a status of SMEs in Kenya as of now?
Thank you very much for welcoming me here. And I appreciate the conference that we are having today, starting yesterday and today. I think this has been an eye-opener, especially for us who have come from Kenya. As you know very well that being a Kenyan, this is a new ministry that was established by His Excellency the President about 3 years ago. And I think I want to commend the President for having decided that MSME is a very important sector in terms of creation of jobs and wealth for people, that he had to establish a specific ministry. And as you can see here, the trend is everywhere. We have about 40 ministers meeting here from various countries, and all of them, they have a great focus to MSME. In Kenya, as you know, I'm about 11 months in the ministry. But the problem we have had that this MSME were all over, spread in various government ministries, some in trade, some in agriculture, some in labor, but now they are together. So as a ministry, our first priority is to make sure that we have a focus to them. MSME Connect is a government platform where the government wants to engage, is engaging key stakeholders within that MSME ecosystem. Because we found out that there are so many private players in that particular system. And to avoid duplication, we have invited them on board to tell us what they are doing, secondly, to tell us what are their problems, and as a government, how can we help? And we have started on touring counties. We have had the first meeting in Nairobi, the second meeting was in Embu, and hopefully the third meeting is going to be in Mombasa, where we are engaging these stakeholders. After that, then we will identify the weak points, and maybe we shall have a portal where we shall give this information, because some of the MSMEs don't have information. Mm-hmm. They might say they want access to finance, but you see they need the information. Where is this finance? Mm-hmm. How can they get that finance? Mm-hmm. So that's what we are working on. Secondly, we want also to carry out a survey of this MSME, because the last survey in Kenya was done in 2016. We want now, 2016 is 9 years ago. We want now to do a survey, and we are hopeful that this will happen this year. We are grateful to the World Bank. The World Bank has supported Kenyan government to carry out this exercise, and the preparation work is ongoing. Okay. So we now know where they are, because the statistic we have, we are told that MSME contribute to 33% of the GDP. They create employment to about 15 million people. There are about 7.4 million in the country. Most of the businesses, 98%, are MSME. So we want to validate this information so that now, as a government, we come up with proper policies to assist MSMEs. In fact, already we have the startup bill before the National Assembly that will actually give direction on startups, and then we come up with general legislation framework that will assist this. The major source of financing are commercial banks, but commercial banks are risk averse to MSMEs. Why? Because they think they are very, very risky. Because commercial banks are in business. There are investors there, the investors want returns. So the management will want to satisfy the shareholders' ego that they get their highest dividend from their business. And this has been a problem. And that's why the Kenya government has come up with a Hustler Fund, so that Hustler Fund can also be part of the supplement, and I think Hustler Fund has done very well. You remember even before, we have the Women Fund, we had the Youth Fund, and we have Kenya Industrial Estates Fund that helps MSME in manufacturing. So while commercial banks are important and they are risk averse, I think it is the responsibility of government, having realized that this sector is very important, the responsibility of the government to come out deliberately as we work on streamlining the sector. Because by streamlining the sector, we must make sure that there is capacity building within that sector. These MSMEs should know what they are supposed to do in order for them to access finance. So some of them don't know. Some of them even don't know where to get this finance. So capacity building is a responsibility of the government. Also, alternative financing at the moment is the government to undertake. So those, I think, is very crucial as we look at commercial banks. But however, in Kenya now, we have come out with a credit guarantee scheme where the government is committing 40 billion. This guarantee scheme will help to de-risk the MSMEs who want to borrow, because the government will now guarantee you as a commercial bank, if this MSME borrows from you, I'm guaranteeing you 60%. So the risk is reduced, and if the risk is reduced, then the cost is now reduced. So you have only 40% you are dealing with the MSME. The 60% you are saying, if the MSME fails to pay me or collapses, then I'm sure of getting 60% from the government guarantee scheme.
And it is very important, because it's been quite a hurdle for very many young entrepreneurs who speak to this on getting this particular finance.
And the only thing I want to tell you that we have had as a government problem is to progress on these issues. We have good ideas. Credit guarantee scheme, my PS is here. We have been talking about it for over a year. It has not been finalized.
What's the problem? Is it legislation?
I think the legislation, it takes time, very meetings, bureaucracy, and so on. And then it takes time. Even the startup bill, I think it went to Parliament when I just came in the ministry. Up to now, you know, it's nearly a year. Bureaucracy is too much. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And even as you talk about that, because clearly, when we spoke to some entrepreneurs, that's something they raised, because they said on paper these policies look very nice, but as a business person it never translates to ground.
It takes time. And I think this is something, as we live here, we must, as a ministry, take it on seriously, so that we are able to progress these people.
Okay. So yes. As we come to the tail end of our conversation, we're in Johannesburg. It's the first Global SME Ministerial Meeting that's taking place.
Yes.
What would be the action point you want to take back to Nairobi, Kenya, from this and apply?
One, as I have said earlier, this was an eye-opener for me as a person, and I'm happy that I came with few government officials, including PS Susan Mangeni. This is an eye-opener for us that other countries, they are moving on. And as Kenyans, we must move on. We must make sure that this is a very important sector, and you can even hear that the G20, the South Africa is going to get the presidency. They have already set up a working group on MSME within the G20. And it shows that now the world is taking seriously the issues of MSME. So as a country also, as I live here, we must refocus our government.
Now, Africa is home to over 1 billion people, and over 70% are youth. Young Africans aren't just the future, they are the driving force behind the continent's SME sector. That's why ALADI and the Mastercard Foundation hosted a breakfast dialogue, bringing entrepreneurs and policymakers to the same table. The conversations covered everything, from tariff barriers and language access to inclusive policies, all aimed at creating a business environment where African SMEs can truly thrive.
You see, this is what Africa is. These are the young Africans starting businesses, making a difference in their communities in so many ways, not just running a business, but going to artisanal fishermen, helping keep the indigenous methods alive, giving them a livelihood, saving young girls who are vulnerable, who've been attacked, who need help and need safety and security, but also giving them livelihoods. And also taking a look at how to build brands and how to access African markets for the food brands we're building. We want to come to the floor now. We'd love your comments as policy actors. What have you heard that resonates? Maybe there are things that you're already doing that we should be aware of, or maybe you're going to take their message and actually apply some of these things in your environments.
Matthew Wilson, the ambassador of Barbados to the WTO and the UN in Geneva, but also chair of the WTO MSME working group. Listen, I feel slightly like I'm in church because that panel is preaching, and I cannot, I mean, seriously, I agree with every single thing that you have said, and actually I applaud you. I personally don't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. So when I look at people like you who have come up with ideas, who have brought people along with you on the journey, who are giving back, who are speaking truth to power, I admire you so very much. But it also makes me very, very sad because I've also been hearing these same things for many, many, many years. And it seems that there's still this huge gap between what you, the real users on the ground, are saying and what we as policymakers are doing. The minister from South Africa last night, who made an incredible speech at the cocktail party, she said now really is no longer the time for talk, it really is the time for action, and we have to put things in place. So I guess my question for the panel is, what has the reaction been from the policymakers when you sit down in front of them if indeed you ever get the chance to sit down in front of them and tell them these things? And then my second question is, you're all SMEs, but you could also be part of larger value chains with bigger businesses. Have you ever explored trying to work with bigger companies in Africa to be part of their value chain? So for example, having your chocolates in this hotel, for example, you know, has that ever been something that you have looked into? Thank you very much.
Oh, excellent questions. I'll come back to the panel with them in just a moment. Let's just take 2 or 3 more, please.
I have to say, I'm not a career civil servant, a career diplomat. I started my own business in early 2001 with venture capital. So I've been on the journey, and like everybody else here, I think have huge admiration for everybody making that journey. It's incredibly hard work and needs tremendous persistence. One thing I wanted to raise, I think the AFCFTA was mentioned, and I think for Africa at the moment, that opportunity to create a large single market, I think is a huge opportunity. And I think in the context of the demographics of Africa and the growing young population, actually that's where the future lies, really, in mobilizing that market and making that market accessible. So I think the UK is very committed to supporting the AFCFTA. Was one of the first countries outside of Africa to sign an MOU with the AFCFTA and put a lot of support, technical assistance, capacity building to try and support that. And historically, through organizations like Trademark Africa, what was Trademark East Africa, really tried to facilitate the movement of goods within Africa, and most successfully in East Africa with looking at easing customs procedures and all of the logistics and those difficulties that were alluded to. But one thing that I specifically wanted to mention that people may not be aware of is the UK's Developing Countries Trading Scheme. And that's effectively our offer to exporters from Africa to access the UK market, quota-free and tariff-free, particularly for least developed countries. But one of the features of the DCTS, which I particularly want to draw people's attention to, is technically what are called the accumulation rules. So the scheme allows you to build value chains within Africa without losing that tariff-free, quota-free access.
Thank you. I have no doubt they will be reaching out to learn more. Can I look at the table and see if there are any other ministers who'd like at this point to say a word or two? I think, yes, I see a hand. Boniface first. Let's come to the lady minister from South Sudan here. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then we'll come back to the next table.
Good morning. Thank you for this program that brings all of us together. And what I would like to say is that the stories that we heard from the youth are very inspiring. And while I was seated here, I was thinking of my situation, the situation of South Sudan, where you find that there are many, many youth that have plans, that have things in mind that they want to do, but they do not have the opportunity to do so. And part of it, of course, is to do with the lack of access to finances, because probably most of you do not know the situation of South Sudan, but we've been going through different conflicts affected by also climate change and many things. So you find that the focus of the government is on security, not on development, not on businesses. So we've been having challenges in regards to helping our youth, and the population of youth in South Sudan, of course, is over 70% of the whole population. But I would want to say that at the level of the government, we have been trying our best. We've been engaging, especially the Ministry of Trade and Industry and Finance, to ensure that central bank and other commercial banks can be able to give loans to youth and women at a lower rate, and of course with the long-term plans of paying those. I would also want to say that the government has also been making sure that we reduce or eliminate non-tariff barriers in areas where there are like roadblocks, where businesses are not flourishing. And of course, when I talk of businesses, majority of them again are youth and women. So those are steps we have been taking. But at this juncture, of course, I will want to thank ITC because of the program of job creation and trade development that they are doing in South Sudan since 2020 for training over 1,000 youth who are vegetable producers, retailers, and those who are processing that. It has really helped a lot. And I would want to say that because of that program, many youth who would rather be idle have been able to pick up, and they are doing businesses and they are really excelling. So I'm bringing these examples to say that youth are always at the heart of every government or policymakers, but because of lack of access to finance, some of them die with those dreams and they cannot come to reality. So it is good that you are inspiring many youth around. And as we go back, I think I will pick one or two from the things that you are doing to also encourage our youth.
Now I'm in government, but I understand where you come from, because I myself was an entrepreneur in the past. And I want to share my experiences from both sides, being a former entrepreneur and now being a civil servant.
Les problématiques économiques pour les petites et moyennes entreprises sont générales partout en Afrique. Raison pour laquelle j'avais participé il y a 4 ans à Addis Abeba par rapport au forum de la zone de libre-échange continentale. Il y a un volet disposition pour les jeunes et les femmes entrepreneurs africains. Donc toutes ces problématiques ont été soulevées lors de ce forum par l'ensemble des jeunes africains qui sont issus du monde de l'entreprise, par rapport à leurs fournisseurs, par rapport à l'accès au marché, par rapport également à l'accès au financement et aussi aux difficultés tarifaires au niveau de la douane par rapport à la problématique que vous avez soulevée.
So some time ago, I participated in a meeting of the African Continental Free Trade Area in Addis Abeba when we were dealing with the problems youth had, and we found that every young person in a business person in Africa has similar problems. Problems accessing markets, problems accessing finance, problems facing tariffs, and problems dealing with customs officers.
Maintenant, le défi pour nous, pays africains, peut-être à travers l'appui de l'ITC et les partenaires au développement, c'est de voir comment mettre en œuvre les différentes dispositions qui existent en Afrique, entre pays africains par rapport aux coopérations bilatérales. Cela va permettre aux jeunes de naviguer dans un environnement économique qui est le soubassement d'un écosystème d'encadrement performant pour le secteur privé et aussi pour les jeunes entrepreneurs. Donc, comme j'ai dit, le défi pour nous, c'est de voir comment mettre en œuvre les différentes politiques publiques en harmonisation entre pays africains. Et cela, je pense que si on le réussit, les jeunes auront beaucoup plus de marge et de facilité pour commercer entre pays africains et aussi à l'accès à d'autres marchés internationaux.
So he hopes that all African countries work together with support of ITC and others in order to enhance the business ecosystems at a continental level, talking to each other and ensure that the business ecosystem really is there to support young businesses.
Le reste, je vous encourage et je vous félicite à être beaucoup plus résilient et endurant pour réussir dans les affaires. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. He encouraged you, he congratulates you, and he asks everybody to work on the resilience of young businesses in the African continent.
Thank you so much, thank you. And I think this is why dialogue, thank you so much. The DG's hand is up over here. Can we please take her comment as well? Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you very much, and all protocol observed. Like I said yesterday, the voice is getting there, but we'll try. I must first say I'm actually encouraged by the youth and the work that they are doing, and the issues, like we have said, you have said a program director that some of the issues we respond to, some of the issues we are noting them, so that are issues that can, especially also the issue of the tariffs, which I took into consideration. My department specifically, it's not necessary in our mandate, but we work with a department called, it's the DTIC, that is responsible for that. That it's something that must be put on the table, so that as an enabler, I like the word that was used, to enable instead of, you know, them getting whatever they're getting and then it gets also depleted. But I just want to also add that in South Africa, my department specifically, we do have what you call a Youth Challenge Fund. This particular fund, it aims to stimulate the innovative business in response to youth unemployment. And this is seen as a major national challenge that needs an urgent and coordinated response. But most of all, also that this fund, how did it come about? It came about during the issue of the COVID-19 that we all know about, and to be able to be a mitigator. It addresses your issue of your significant funding gap in the market for startup youth-owned enterprises and existing instruments that are available that cannot adequately address the needs. It also supports the youth startup to promote technology and innovation in youth startup, and also supporting youth enterprises with any needed adjustment to their model, to their businesses.
And for those of you that have shared what you're doing at country level that maybe we weren't aware of, that we could tap into, so important, and we're going to follow that up. As I come to you all, you inspire us. There's an African proverb that says, a tree cannot move unless there's wind. And to me, that says many things. It means the tree, you know, will sway with the wind, but also the seeds will move and will build, you know, grow the new trees. I almost see you as trees, because you've planted roots and you're doing incredible things, and you're asking us, provide that wind to let us move, to let us make a difference. So give us a final word. One thing. You've told us many things you need us to do. If there's one thing you want everybody here to walk out and do after this meeting, what is that one thing that could make a difference? I'll start with you on that end.
One thing that we could do to make a difference is start by appreciating what we have before it's gone. Because we've always heard that we only realize the value of something when it's gone. And as a South African, having some of the richest coastline in the world, we cannot let these foreign corporations drain our oceans and let them steal the food off of our plates. Thank you.
I will start with one thing I am leaving with here. Just when we landed, the ALADI team said a word that will remain with me. You deserve a seat on the table. And one call of action I would want all of us to live with here. Do not be afraid in investing in young people. Let's co-create together. We have the solution. We are in the grassroots. We invite you to learn our language as we tap into your mentorship. Thank you.
In the next 5 to 10 years, we those sitting here will be where you are. What would you want to be remembered for? We will be the stakeholders your future self would be accountable to. What would you want to be remembered for helping the youth?
Across the world, around 90% of all businesses are SMEs, and nearly 1 in every 2 jobs is tied to them. The messages from the ministerial sessions were clear. If SMEs are to flourish, we must expand access to finance by working with banks and lenders to offer more affordable and diverse funding options. Accelerate digital transformation by ensuring equitable access to reliable digital infrastructure and connectivity. And support the green transition by opening affordable pathways to green finance for SMEs. These aren't the only steps, but they are essential if you're to build resilience and unlock growth across the SME sector. Thank you for joining us on State of Africa. I'm Jeff Morte. Connect with us through ALADI's social media handles. Until next time, bye-bye.